And we're back. People deluded. I'm back again. Special guest. We got the main man, Tom Canton. We say, my boy, you good?
I am so sorry, first of all, beyond
That's
anything
cool,
else.
man. I knew he was going to do this. It's cool, man. It's
I
cool,
felt
man.
horrendous yesterday. I
It's
couldn't
minor,
tell you.
man. It's minor. We got it in the end, man. And you know what? Me and you have obviously, like, we've been trying to make sure the diaries fall into place here. And it's weird how life works because obviously it's the international break. I'm quite a reflective person, Tom. I always try and reflect on Arsenal and things like that. And that's kind of the theme of today. Yeah. So the first question, in fact, better yet, big up the chat. Make sure you're following Tom. It's in the title. My first question, yeah, like before I ask you about Sunderland and all these things, like, how are you feeling about Arsenal this season? Like, what's your personal thoughts?
Pretty darn great. Because we're sitting top of the table right now, joint top of the Champions League into the League Cup quarter final. I think it's hard to not feel good about Arsenal. I think it's almost like it's almost like self-inflicted pain if you somehow find yourself not feeling good about Arsenal, because
Facts.
until you win the league, the next best place to be is top, until that point happens. So the happiest
Exactly.
place you can be until that final game, final minute, final second of the match that leads whoever it is to win the title, the best place you can be is in that number one spot all the way to that point. And that's where we have. I mean, Arsenal have picked up almost as many points as you've got tabs open this season. Um, it's been very impressive to see how many kind of Arsenal have been so resolute and
This guy.
consistent in what they've achieved. And the only thing second to the number of points Arsenal picked up is the amount of clean sheets they've picked up along the way as well. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. And I find it challenging to not feel good about Arsenal right now, mate. How about you?
Tom, you said it there, man. I mean, obviously, I think within the premise of a season, there's many twists and turns and bumps and bruises, and a 4 point gap that we've got in the table. It could turn to a point before we next kick a ball, and it's gonna fluctuate. There's gonna be twists and turns. But even if I personally feel, even if you've got concerns about Arsenal Football Club at this moment in time, it's like the cons are here, the pros are up here. It's like, I think one thing that I believe goes over people's minds is we're 11 Premier League games into the season. We're not in our final form. We've been amassing points on the board. Our attack, I wouldn't say it hasn't clicked yet, but we haven't had players available. Our attackers, bar Trossard, ain't really gone through those kind of higher echelons of form. But everything is positive, man. We've put our best foot forward. I'm not here to say we're the best team in the world and things like that, but we've got a very big chance of winning the Premier League. And I can't sit here, Tom, and tell you what silverware we're going to win. But at this moment in time, we're in 4 competitions, and I've never been more confident that in May of 2026 we're going to win something. And I don't want to be that guy, yeah, because to a degree I think it's a bit of a cop out. But if we go all the way back to August and I offered you like purely what all of these W's, 2 draws and an L, and the bumps and bruises have come against an informed side like Sunderland, where I'm not saying we couldn't have won, but you can't win them all. They're doing quite well, and if you can't win, don't lose. Yeah, we could have done better against City, but it is still Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, and courtesy of a free kick, we lost to the current Premier League champions, in it. And I'm not suggesting we couldn't have done better, but if I offered anybody this points tally, or better yet, this platform going into after the international break, they're a liar, in my opinion, if they tell me that they wouldn't have had it. And like Tom, as you said it there, like the clean sheets, the shots on target, and the very fact that we're crying about dropping points against an informed team like Sunderland, we're crying about conceding goals for the first time in a gazillion years, really, against Sunderland. It speaks volumes of what we're doing and what we're accomplishing. So credit to everybody connected to Arsenal Football Club. And as I said, there's no guarantees in life, but Arsenal fans, like, keep the faith. The club and the players, because they're the ones that got to go and do it, they've given you every reason to be optimistic. So then it leads me to ask you, yeah, what do you make, before we like central back onto Arsenal, like, what do you make of City and Liverpool?
Well, it's funny because I was thinking as you were kind of running through those results, if you'd have said to me, if you'd have showed me that graphic, say in August, like you said, and I'd seen that we'd lost to Liverpool in that run as the only team, I would not have made the assumption that they'd be 8 points behind us at this stage.
Exactly.
I would have assumed that they would be right up there with us, not sitting in 8th place, 8 points behind Arsenal. So that is, it's in some ways surprising. I will say, and it is on record from my shows over the summer, that I felt that Liverpool's spending was incredibly unbalanced. It almost felt like a kid who'd unlocked a financial boost on career mode, how they approached their window. Because they just went through this spending spree of looking at who's like the best player that we can get without really thinking about the impact on their squad necessarily. And if I was, in charge of Liverpool's recruitment in the summer and I had, 250 million, let's say, that eventually got spent on Wirtz and Isak, having already got the other players, let's say Ekitike had been signed, I would have looked at that and thought, well, we desperately need another centre-half to cover Van Dijk and Konate, which they did go and get in the young Italian guy that came in, but obviously is now injured. But still, it wasn't necessarily like a Mark Guehi level addition.
And they wanted Guehi, so you could argue they wanted two centre-halves.
They did indeed. They did know. It's not even arguably. You're right. You're absolutely right. They did want two defenders, and not only that, but I think they've needed a strong number 6. They wanted Zubimendi the season before last. They haven't gone out and signed potentially a replacement. I even looked at like Spurs getting Palhinha on loan and thought that is a player that could improve Liverpool's defensive midfield role for this season. But they decided against that and spent huge money on a player in Isak who, if he's coming in for that level of money, he's got to stay fit, first of all, which is always a big question mark about Isak and has been. Ekitike started the season so well as well that I thought, they don't need to sign an Isak. They could go out and sign like a young centre forward as well, or an older maybe option as well, just to replace Nunez, or not even sell Nunez. They could keep him. I know the passing of Diogo Jota, of course, very sad
R.I.P.
as it was, has been an unquantifiable impact on that team. And I always kind of talk about Liverpool almost as if that situation didn't happen at times, because I just feel as though you can't quantify grief. You can't quantify that level of impact to a team. And so I almost feel that trying to quantify it whenever you have a debate about where Liverpool are, what they're doing or what they're spending or how their business is working, it's difficult ever to kind of put that into a box and try and work out how it's going to affect things. So I kind of keep it to the football when discussing Liverpool, and then in comparison to Arsenal and City. But on City are always a team for me that we're going to be relying on one man, and that one man was Erling Haaland. And this season he has been and looks to be maybe in the best iteration of him that we have seen so far.
Yep.
And that's a scary thing as an Arsenal supporter, because if Arsenal don't win the league this season, I don't think it'll be because of Manchester City. I think it'll be because of Erling Haaland. And also us as well, and how we affect things. I think it was someone asked Arteta in the press conference recently, is the only team that can stop Arsenal winning the league this season Arsenal? Because it just seems as though that's kind of that classic meme. Yeah, and I think that it's got merit to it. It's that classic meme of the guy behind the guy holding a metal rod, and every label is Arsenal, and that's almost
exactly yeah.
So if Arsenal are to lose or not to win the league this season, I think it will be one where we can own, even though those two teams have got quality and strength and problems. I think the only reason that Arsenal don't win the league this season is something to do with us, not to do with those two.
So how do you quantify who's the favourites for the Premier League? Because I feel in these 11 or so games in the Premier League, I would say from the start of the season up until the Newcastle game, people would say Arteta's got cowardly tactics. The players are doing this and they're not doing that. Kind of going back to Liverpool. Liverpool haven't rested on their laurels. They're so good. They've brought in all of these players. They're doing this and that. City are inconsistent. I would say after the Newcastle game, up until a ball was kicked against Sunderland, I feel everybody, not even Arsenal fans, I feel like the media and the landscape around Arsenal is they're inevitable. Nobody can stop them, blah, blah, blah. Since the Sunderland game, which isn't a great result, but isn't a bad result, all things conceded, I think it's almost like people still have Arsenal as the favourites, but they're like, a 4-point gap that could turn to 1 if results go south against Liverpool. Against Spurs, kind of what you said there. Haaland can drag City. City have the know-how. They've got Pep Guardiola. So it's almost like people are now shifting the conversation to Man City. But like at this moment in time, where do you place the favourites?
So at the start of the season, my favourites were Liverpool just because they were champions. And they added, even though I'm critical of the business they done, if you spend 400 million on players and you're the champions, you should be the favourites, for the next season.
Especially the calibre of players they brought in with the Isaacs and the Wirtz and all that stuff.
100%. And so I'm still surprised how far they have dropped off. And I'm surprised that kind of criticisms I had of last season of Arne Slot have in some ways come true. I thought that they got very lucky last season to be champions in a way, because of what happened to Arsenal and City. And they didn't really have a viable challenger because of what happened to both of their two challengers. So this time around, Arsenal, I think at this point now, I don't think there could be too much debate that as we stand right now, Arsenal have to be labelled favourites as we go in, and opinions change and landscapes change and context change, and the context has changed now that Arsenal, I think, have to be put down as favourites because of how strong they look, because of the fact that even though they've had, of the three teams, the worst injury record of all of them, by some distance, I would argue as well. The volume of players Arsenal have lost, the key players that Arsenal have lost, particularly into key areas like centre-forward, with all three centre-forwards being lost for that trip to Sunderland and nearly coming out of there with a win still despite that. I think that we have to go down as the favourites for the league right now. I don't know about the Champions League, because I still think there are other teams in that competition like Bayern Munich who look incredibly impressive. PSG, even though they lost to Bayern, still a very, very good outfit. And Barcelona can turn over anybody as well on their day as well. Real Madrid, less certain about them, and you've still got Liverpool and Man City, who in a cup competition, you never know what they're going to produce. So I think that Arsenal right now should be comfortable with the label of favourite, should be comfortable sitting where they are. And I think that I've got a team that are ready as well, more than anything, despite not having the experience, to go on and win it.
I think you're bang on the money, and I think like you just said there with experience, City have obviously, City have done it. Liverpool have done it under two managers. We haven't. But then I always flip it and say, not questioning the other teams, but it's like, could an advantage, and I genuinely think, could an advantage be the hunger? Because collectively, our players, unfortunately, haven't won silverware. Whatever way we dress it, in the last 3 years, we've been so close but so far with different contexts and things. And that fire burning, that never doing it, for me, could be an advantage. And I'm comfortable being favourites. I'm comfortable people have us as favourites, because I think that stuff fluctuates. I think all you've got to do is just win games. And I think a byproduct of how people are talking more positive about our club versus the couple of weeks into the season is because we've just been handling business. What you do on the field dictates all the other talking points. And I believe in my manager, believe in what Bert has done. I think the players have this hunger. I think they've shown me a lot of maturity. I think there's elements of us being a bit inevitable this season. I think Sunderland was, I wouldn't say a bad day at the office, but for one of the best defensive sides in Europe, I would argue Arteta and the players wouldn't be happy with the goals we conceded and obviously getting ourselves back into the game and whatnot. But Sunderland have been doing quite well. The only thing I would say is I just wish that, as much as I'm positive about the club, I know you can't have it all. Forget Sunderland. If we just have taken 4 to 6 points of City or Liverpool, of City and Liverpool, sorry, I'd be even more bullish. I want to ask you a question, like, obviously, we want to win Prems, we want to win Champs, we want to win it all. But I just go back to last season, and I felt like, when you saw Newcastle win and them down the road win the trophy, and everybody else, a lot of people sat here and said, it doesn't matter about silverware. Trophy's a trophy. You need to win kind of something. I think that might be true, but I think, Tom, that would be a bit hypocritical of people to say then, because I think if Arsenal only win the League Cup or the FA Cup in May, they won't say what they said a year from now. But like, do you think a League Cup or an FA Cup in isolation is enough to suffice?
I think if it was one of those two, I still think I'd be disappointed, come the end of the season. But mainly because, as I said right now, Arsenal are favourites for the league. To be in this position, to see our rivals in the positions they're in, I feel as though I would be disappointed at the end of the season if Arsenal aren't champions. Because it's not just about this season for me. It's about the last 4 years, inclusive of this season. It's been building up to this. That was why I was always so kind of like, patient in so many ways with those years of seeing, because even though it was a surprise in 22-23 when we competed for the first time, and then in 23-24 we took things a step further and looked almost destined that season to go on and win it if it wasn't for City replicating and then bettering a ridiculous run of form in the second half of the campaign.
The
last season where Arsenal had to overcome challenges they've never faced before in that volume of, I think, 27 separate injuries, and still managed to finish second somehow and get to 2 cup semi-finals. I look at this season and go, we've paid our dues, we've done our business, we've set ourselves up to succeed. And so if 100. We don't succeed in the league, it has to go down as a failure, I think. And so it's not to say that means for me Arteta goes, because I think I'm trying to piece together how we don't win it this season at this point. Like where we are right now, if Arsenal aren't to win it, what has to happen? And for me, what has to happen for Arsenal to not win the league from this point isn't anything with like Arteta messing up his tactics or players not doing X, Y, and Z. It would have to be something worse than last season happens to us
God
this
forbid.
season. And that would be catastrophic. But if you're looking at the volume of injuries we've had at the beginning of this season, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Arsenal could get 27 separate injuries again or more, because we've already had, I think we're already into double figures and we're only 11 games in. So, and we've dealt with that incredibly well, but it's the start of the season. The players have the most kind of energy levels that they're going to have. And in 3-4 months' time, those energy levels are going to be much lower. The fatigue's going to be much higher. The lactic acid's going to be building up each week. And you're thinking, are we able to sustain this? And now I want to see, obviously, in the next phase of the season starts after the international break, when Havertz, Odegaard, Madueke, all these players return, amongst others as well, how Arteta manages the festive period. Are we still top at Christmas? Do we still have a buffer at Christmas? Those are big questions that need to be answered. It's exciting to have these players coming back. And if they do come back, I don't think Arsenal necessarily need to do any business in January, because I think we'll have a big enough squad if everybody is fit. But it will depend upon what things look like then. So, yeah, look, I think from an Arsenal point of view, if it was to be just a League Cup or an FA Cup, while I would celebrate those greatly, I'd still look upon the season and go, we should have been champions this season.
I'm with you, Thomas. Like, I'll take any trophy. I think these boys have done bloody well. I think they need to win trophies and like get a taste of it. I think that's where we're at now, and things of that ilk. But I would be disappointed, specifically if we don't win the Prem. Champions League, like you said, like, you know, we've got to a quarters, we've got to a semis. We are one of the better teams in Europe. We're maybe not the biggest and baddest, but I kind of think the champs is one you play it by ear. You just concentrate on the league phase. You just deal with who you get, and then it kind of is what it is, really and truly. And I think there's plenty of positive and negatives we can learn from Real Madrid and PSG. Premier League, I can see it really. FA Cup, I always want it. League Cup, you never know what that could do for you in Wembley if you win it in February, on top of what we're doing and the boost that could give us. And I need to ask you this as well. Maybe I'm getting a bit too confident, but do you think we could win multiple honors? Like that could be, you know, the two domestic ones in the two domestic cups. That could be a Prem and a domestic one. That could be what I think everyone would want in the Prem and the champs. Like, am I wrong for thinking maybe 2 trophies could land?
I don't think you're wrong at all. No, I think if you look at League Cup, you know, at the moment, the quarterfinal still has Arsenal, Newcastle, Man City, Chelsea are the kind of the 4 bigger teams, and all of them are playing teams that you would expect them to beat. You know, you'd expect us like we did last season. It's funny how it's kind of replicated the same quarterfinal as last season for us, with Palace. But you'd expect us to win that game, especially with the week they've got. They've got Conference League, then Leeds away, then us in the space of 6 days. So you should be looking at Arsenal with a week's rest before they go to Everton, with no midweek, you know, responsibilities. We should be expected to go to another semi-final. It sucks the semi-final's 2 legs. It shouldn't be 2 legs. We know that.
Ridiculous.
But we've got a good squad that at that point, and even by the time we play Palace, hopefully Havertz and maybe even Jesus and, you know, Odegaard and Madueke should be back by that point. So we've got a squad that can hopefully cope with that and can, you know, attack that competition. It's a competition I look at always with an edge to it. I feel as though it's a competition only worth winning if you win it with other trophies. I think it's a competition that elevates your success if you've also won it alongside other things. If you win it in isolation, it's never really that much of an accolade to point to and go, look at the trophy we won. It's one of those where you want to go, look at the trophies that we won with the League Cup involved in that. I think that's when you can look at the League Cup as a successful kind of point of reference as winning it, even though Arsenal's record in the competition goes back a long, long way. And it'd be nice to end that kind of lengthening time and drought that we haven't had success in the competition. But I think it's still one of those that only has relevance and kind of prestige, if you like, if, as I say, you win it alongside other things. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right to want multiple honours this season. And this team and this manager, I think, is worthy of that in this single season.
I hope they can, man. And Tom, it's one of those things where, you know, again, from a professional point of view, it's not really going to make sense. But when I look at the amount of players year in, year out that participate in all these competitions and go throughout their careers, it's actually not that many players that win honours. And as a player, there's no guarantees to win trophies. Of course, depending on the club you're at, you might, you know, get some. But yeah, like I wouldn't be against winning it. But I think you're bang on the money in the sense that I always say, like, nobody cares about the League Cup until you win it. If we win, trophy's a trophy, Arsenal won the trophy, blah, blah, blah. And the same goes for other clubs. If you lose it, if you don't win it, like what we would say, and other people would say, oh, it's the League Cup, it's not one of the majors, etc. Like you said, it elevates your success, and I kind of like stealing your point a bit. I think it kind of builds winning mentality. I look at the amount of times, Pep won it. I think Klopp won it a couple of ones. I think we could kind of go down that kind of avenue, and it could help us, if I'm honest with you. I want to skip back to this question on screen, yeah, or not even this question, yeah. Arsenal fans, and I want to be respectful to the word PTSD, but quote unquote, Arsenal fans have PTSD, and I think this season is a bit of a weird one, even me to a degree. Like, I believe in what we're doing, but it's almost like the better we get, the more we're just dealing with the business. It's not that you're scared, but you're like, oh, is this too good to be true? Kind of thing. Where are you at on that? Because I know I'm not explaining it well, but you as an Arsenal fan, you know what I'm alluding to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the phrase, the acronym that comes up in my chat box a lot. And, I think in a metaphorical sense, it is very appropriate to describe kind of, what Arsenal fans have dealt with in the last few years. And it's a struggle to believe that we're going to do it when we've obviously failed and slipped in doing it so many seasons. And it's also like in 2025, social media and the kind of the rival fan environment that we live in, Arsenal have that bottling tagline alongside them, and that's what we have pointed towards. Until we end that, we're going to continue to do it. We've got to shake it off, as you're absolutely right. And I think that Arsenal have got the capacity to do this season. I think that what's good is that we as fans feel it a lot more than the players do, and I think that's important, because I think if the players felt it, and I know for a fact that they don't, they obviously are aware of like what Arsenal have come so close to doing in previous seasons, but I think they're very good at kind of putting results and seasons behind them that they didn't get what they want from, and to go again. You think about last season, the Champions League semi-final, incredibly painful moment in Paris. I think that this season shows you how we've started. This season shows you how quickly they've moved on from that huge disappointment of the Champions League semi-final, and have moved into this season where they've won every single Champions League game to nothing, and they're going to go and face a Bayern side, which will be a really good litmus test. It's a shame that game falls between Spurs and Chelsea, because I actually think we should prioritise the league games and rotate for Bayern. We don't need to win. We don't even necessarily need to draw that game against Bayern, because we've won our opening 4 Champions League games. The likelihood is, with the games we've got left, we will finish in the top 8 relatively comfortably. But I still think it's a good litmus test, that Bayern game, for this squad. They will be without Luis Diaz. They will be without some other players that are injured. I think we should be able to take the game to them in the Emirates. So those 3 games, and it links into the question of the PTSD thing. If Arsenal can come through those 3 games with 3 wins, or maybe even 2 wins and a draw in the Bayern game, maybe, I think that would really ease fans' kind of concerns, especially if City and Liverpool have further slips in these weeks. Kind of think City go to Newcastle next, which is obviously a very difficult game. They are without Dan Burn, which is a big loss. He got suspended in the game against Brentford, unfortunately. But I guess, it's just one of those things where you got to try and keep fingers crossed that other teams can start doing Arsenal more favours than they already have done with Liverpool, but more so now with City.
I want to ask you as well, yeah, obviously because of your line of work, you see it at the forefront, and I don't know where this has come from. I think people, I'm not suggesting we're the most entertaining team in the world, but to compare us to Stoke in all aspects, not defensively, I think it's ridiculous. What do you make of this tag about Arsenal not being entertaining? Because for me personally, I don't really care about your entertainment if you don't support Arsenal Football Club. We're at that point of kind of like, by hook or by crook, we need to get over the line. And I do think when people sit there, I'm not saying we're the most entertaining team. I don't feel our attack has clicked yet, but maybe I'm wrong. But when I use my eyes, you can't tell me this team's boring to watch, but everyone's allowed an opinion. So that's why I'm asking you, like, where do you stand on this entertainment tag? Or Arsenal don't move me, they're not an entertaining team to watch?
So what people need to understand is that Arsenal have the most engaged fan base in the world, for me, in terms of kind of social media and clicks and views, and what club globally at present, right now, on a social aspect, has more attention than Arsenal. I think you're struggling to find somebody. And I know that Real Madrid and Barcelona have incredibly engaged fan bases globally, but from a media standpoint, the club that gets the most attention, that gets, alongside Manchester United being the other one, is Arsenal. And so if Arsenal are doing really good, that's difficult to gain kind of discussion around. When you're doing well, isn't as entertaining, as engaging as when things aren't going as well. Being able to laugh at Man United since Sir Alex Ferguson left has been one of the most privileged things as a rival fan that we've been able to enjoy, and all of the content around that, and the point where fans are growing their hair out until they win 5 games in a row. Like these things, just
He's in trouble.
He's in trouble. He's going to be donating a lot of hair to charity at the end of when that run finally comes to an end. But with Arsenal, because Arsenal have been so good for so many years, even though they've not won anything, that element of the not winning something, and now, of course, when they're so consistent this season and they look such strong favourites for the league,
facts.
It's basically been like this cultivation of an idea of what can we now get Arsenal fans to engage.
Where can we move the goalpost to now?
Where can we spark the rage bait? Where can we spark the attention? And that has been what it is for this season. It has been, well, they're scoring a lot of set piece. They're not more set piece goals than open play goals, but they are scoring a lot of set piece goals. They are scoring, of course, they have kind of introduced, they did really spawn the long throw thing. So the PSG game was the first time I really noticed long throws being used as much
Thomas Partey.
For a team like Arsenal, exactly, Thomas Partey when he's doing that. And so they've kind of been the team that's been labelled as the trendsetters for that, even though other teams have done it for a while, but they've done it as one of the bigger sides more than
look at Brentford
other.
with long throws, as you mentioned it. Big up them as well. Like, it's all about fine margins. You should do that. That's where football's moved to. Like, set pieces are deciding things week in, week out, but it's just us.
I think people get annoyed at the inevitability of Arsenal as well. Like, football's meant to be this unpredictable sport that you can't tell and anything can happen in a game. And it'd be like Arsenal get a corner kick, and it's almost feeling like you've got a penalty at times. It's certainly, I remember turning to Charles Watts when we got that penalty. I'm saying it myself. When we got that corner at Burnley, I turned to him like, well, here's the first penalty of the game. And then we went and scored. And it's just like, it's so funny, like, because it's just so inevitable. And it seems to grind people's gears as well. And if there's one thing that it seems that the landscape doesn't like at the moment is Arsenal doing well, because for you to get maximum engagement from Arsenal fans, Arsenal needs to not do well. Exactly. So what can we cultivate to generate engagement? It's, well, I mean, even from an Arsenal point of view, I mean, look at, just to kind of go a bit more meta about it, but look at how growing on YouTube, typically back in the day, was done more so during Arsenal's worst years. The biggest growth we saw socially amongst particularly like creators came about when Arsenal were doing badly. Growth has not been as fast when Arsenal across the board, and that goes for myself as well. Growth is not as prevalent when Arsenal are doing well.
People don't care for Arsenal to do well unless you support us.
That's what I mean. And I frankly couldn't care less how fast or slow things grow as long as Arsenal are doing well. So I think from that point of view, it gives you a little bit of a snapshot of the problem the media landscape has when Arsenal do well and the lack of engagement they get from talking positively about Arsenal. And so we have to find something to kind of poke at and poke the bear and get people engaged again.
And I always say, Tom, you're spitting facts. You've echoed everything and a lot of like my long-term supporters are saying, but I always kind of say that exact thing. I always say, Arsenal fans, I think we keep the light bills on in a lot of media houses. And I think you could say the same with society, but in football, when we know someone's speaking nonsense, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying you don't want to defend the club. There's a sense of pride. But when you know someone's evidently rage baiting, they probably, if you were to ask them away from this tweet, if they really feel like that, they'll probably say something different. We have to learn to ignore, but we don't learn to ignore. These people don't care, because at the end of the day, you replying, they look on the back end, like how you and me can go on YouTube analytics. It's just going to show green. It's just going to show click through rate. And they're just going to be laughing in it, really. So until we learn to ignore it, it's going to keep happening. I guess, as they say, the game kind of is the game in that regards. I want to show you this, because I don't want to forget to ask you this. Obviously, we know there's several injuries. There's 6, and we miss all of them, of course. But from what I'm about to ask you, there'd be no fun if I say we need them all back. Of all them players on that list, which one do you think you miss the most, or we need the most type of thing?
Well, I think of the 6, it's probably either one of Gyökeres or Havertz for starters, because we need that centre forward. We absolutely need a centre forward. If Gyökeres was fit, because it's only a minor issue, next up for me would be Odegaard, because I love Eze. Like, I really want Eze to succeed. I still thought that his best role for Arsenal would come off the left-hand side, and a lot of people felt like it was going to be more so through the middle. But I felt as though that the left would give him more space and freedom to work his flair, whereas in the middle, when Arsenal go up against so many low and mid blocks, that he struggles in those kind of environments in the centre part of the pitch. Whereas Ødegaard is more likely to thrive in those areas and find those cute little passes
He's
and
used to
moments
those kind of game states. Ødegaard.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that after the centre forward is dealt with and we've got our striker back, the next one is Ødegaard. So either one of Kai or Victor, back in the team, Arsenal's level goes up considerably. But I think being able to bring Ødegaard in, perhaps they're moving Eze to the left, although Trossard's a brilliant season so far. I think that for me is the key area, yeah.
It's a dodgy one, Tom, because like I said, we missed them all. You're a bit nervous around injuries, and I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, and I don't know this for a fact. I just think it's the age-old thing, yeah. Like, you're excited about a couple players coming back. Unfortunately, a couple of players go down. We've obviously got the international break, and we hope everyone's wrapped in cotton wool. And naturally, when you've got less players to pick from, there is that risk that the existing players, because obviously we have to field out an 11, like, there's a risk that they're going to get more injuries. I feel sorry for Martinelli because Trossard's obviously the poster boy. I'd reckon he's our best performing attacker at the moment. But those two's futures were subject to speculation. They've done brilliant. Jesus, unfortunately, we're accustomed to not seeing you, but there is a role for you this season. We're going to need everyone. For all of the noise and everything that was said before Noni Madueke even kicked a ball and had his first training session, I think everybody kind of sees that there's a role for him here. So we're going to need you, like, type of thing. Ødegaard, it speaks for itself, kind of what you're saying. And unfortunately, I think if Kai Havertz doesn't get injured in the first game of the season, I don't think Gyökeres gets a muscular injury. He came in with no preseason. Yeah, benefit was you're going to get a run of games, but you ain't been ran into the ground. But it's just one of those things. Like, we're going to need both of them. We ain't got a centre forward. And yes, we have had Marino, and credit to Marino, he's done quite well. I just felt like even against Sunderland, really, in the second half against Burnley, naturally, Marino's game isn't to run in behind, or he doesn't carry that threat. So naturally he drops into midfield. Teams start to venture a bit forward. And I think Gyökeres and to a degree Kai Havertz kind of cripples teams in doing that. We need everyone fit. I'd love to see Jesus in the mix, even if we had him. He's an option up front as well as off the left. So yeah, we just need everyone. You touched on Eze, yeah. And while we're here, we might as well touch on a couple of the summer signings. Like, have you been underwhelmed by Eze? Because I mean this in the most positive way. I give Eze, for me, I think you've been 7 out of 10. I think you could be a lot more. I give you the luxury that it's 11, 12 games in. Obviously, this is a complicated system to learn individually and how it ties into the collective. I think, like you touched on, there's a bit of a low block tax that everybody's going to be against. I think he's realized how to thrive with us against the run of play or when the games are kind of open. But doing the Eze stuff when it's low blocks and mid blocks, I kind of think he struggles, and I feel like the game he struggled the most against for me might be Fulham away. But where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think that where Arsenal are going to be when these players return and where ultimately Arsenal go to and that next step for Arsenal, a lot of people have talked about like the gaps between winning and losing in these opening games, right? The opening 11 games, the gaps between winning and losing have been maybe tighter than what many have wanted to see. That, drawing at Sunderland, 1-0 against Palace, 2-1 against Newcastle, even some of the 2-goal victories that have been pretty tight, leaving it late in Bilbao and things like this. This is where you start to get more credence around kind of that argument of, are Arsenal convincing enough at this point? Even though we put
tell us that's how you win titles and trophies when other people do it. It's ridiculous.
I know. It is ridiculous. But what these players returning could do and what Arsenal's next step could be is that, and I think you were so spot on when you said about Gyökeres wouldn't have this injury if Havertz was here or Jesus was here. It's so spot on because, and people accuse Arteta of kind of running players into the ground. It's not about running players into the ground at all. It's about trying to maximize your squad in the best way to get the best results. And the thing is, if he brought players off and we started dropping points, he'd be absolutely lambasted for taking them off. But it feels as though it's any which way we can kind of point a finger or kind of undermine Arteta. And I think when he gets these players back, Arsenal could run away with this. Arsenal could really run away with it if they get those players back. And we've already played some really difficult teams. We've gone to Anfield, we've gone to St James's Park, we've gone to Sunderland, which apparently is a tricky place to go. We've gone to Turf Moor now, which I think is going to be another team who takes points off others.
For us, Old Trafford, maybe not necessarily Man United.
For us, Old Trafford, absolutely us for us, Old Trafford. Getting that kind of, that monkey off our back, if you will, was really important. And Old Trafford has been that for us for a long time. So I'm really happy with that. And Stamford Bridge is going to be up next, another place where Arsenal have we've had a decent record there of late. But I think, last couple of seasons, have we drawn both last time we went there? So
yeah.
I think if we can get a win there as well and win the derby, all of a sudden you're looking very, 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 very comfortable with the games that you've got left. So fingers crossed that happens.
That leads me to ask you, because it's going to sound dumb, because like I'm looking at it now, like we've got Spurs, Bayern Munich, Chelsea away, as you said, Brentford at home, Aston Villa away, Club Brugge in the Champions League, obviously Arsenal versus Wolves on the 13th, and then we've got Everton, Crystal Palace, Villa at home, Brighton at home to kind of close out the year. So I can't sit here and tell you that, not even that I'm nervous, because again, Arsenal have put their best foot forward. Anyone can beat anyone in the Prem and all of those kind of things. So it's not to say, like, because these games will be probably the most sold out games at the Emirates or within Arsenal fans when they're traveling. But I was more like watching the run of games we had ending at Sunderland, because you mentioned it there, Fulham, Newcastle, Palace, fair enough, it's in the League Cup, but Brighton, the quote-unquote bogey teams, like for me, I was more nervous about that. And it's not to say there's not many twists and turns, but we've navigated that bloody brilliant. So how do you feel about this run of games? Because you indirectly said as well, like you would rotate against Bayern. So I took from that in that it is a tough run of games. We obviously do need to go on a winning run, but we're going to have to be cute and clever with the squad, obviously fitness permitting.
Yeah, and I think Villa's another one that they look in really good form now as well. So
just when they're about to play us, typically.
I know, and we play them twice in quite a short period of time. So I think we played them in December twice. I think both our league games against them are in December 6th and December 30th. So that's mad that we have to do that. But again, get Villa Park out of the way. And if you can come away from there, again, like we did last season with a victory, is we're kind of snatch and grab result that last year. Villa were really pushing us, and David Raya had to pull off a couple of mad saves. Paul Trossard and Partey, I think, got the goals that season. So, yeah, look, Arsenal have got, if you can come through Spurs and Chelsea with maximum points, you then host Brentford. If you then go to Villa Park off the back of 3 wins to gain momentum again, you're laughing. You got to go to Bruges, who just drew against Barcelona, so then absolutely no
big result for them.
Ground. So maybe again, but you can rotate there. You got a home game against Wolves, which has to be a win. Every team is putting however many past Wolves. It does feel like we're playing teams when they get their new managers in place, though, which is a little annoying. But we're still managing to come through it. Everton away is obviously a very interesting one, and if you can then get to a cup semi-final before Christmas, you're laughing. And then you got Brighton at home, and then Villa at home, and then you're into January. So this run of games, if Arsenal was, as I say, I think that people were quite disappointed after the result against Sunderland, and it kind of put a little bit of a dampener, especially because it was the weekend that Liverpool and City were playing each other. So it was guaranteed one would drop points, and we weren't able to maximise that while another one closed the gap. But it was pointed out to me, everyone should know who score guy is, who is obviously the guy who, whenever Arsenal score at the Emirates and it's at the North Bank end, the camera pans to the corner and he's the guy doing the score in the camera screen. His Twitter account tweeted out something the other day, which I highlighted on my show, and I think was a really good piece of perspective. So, like, before the October international break, Arsenal had a 1-point lead over Liverpool, a 3-point lead over City, and a 5-point lead over Chelsea. Going into the November international break, we had a 4-point lead over City, a 6-point lead over Chelsea, and an 8-point lead over Liverpool. And I think that's the perspective of, like, one international break to the other, and now we go from here to to January. Will those gaps increase further? Can Arsenal widen those gaps more, and can they continue on this trend of just monotonous victories?
And why everyone should calm down a bit, but boy,
indeed.
You can't tell Arsenal fans to calm down, but that's what I mean, because now it's going to sound cringy, but now I think that, as silly as it might sound, now I think the season starts. Like I always say this, from August, I'm only interested in the first 10, 11 games, still having the same ambitions that we obviously had before a ball was kicked, because now you're going to start to see teams in the groove of things. And I feel in the first run of fixtures, that's where momentum and form and all of these kind of things play a part. Like we see teams that quite frankly can't buy a win, keep losing. Someone like Sunderland, like, I'm not saying that they won't overachieve and maybe finish in the highest position they can, but it didn't surprise me the way they played and kind of the way the game kind of panned out, really and truly, if that makes sense. Yeah, go on, Tom. Tom needs to refresh quickly. There's been an audio issue, people, but we'll be there. So yeah, that's that. Obviously, Tom's got to go at 10, people. So I wanted to make sure you lot had your questions, and we're going to host a couple of questions specific for Tom before we let him go. Question for Tom: you can only pick one, Premier League or Champions League this season. What are you choosing and why?
If it's just one, I'll absolutely just pick in the Premier League for me, because if Arsenal don't win the Premier League this season, that for me becomes such a huge story. Like if Arsenal don't win the Premier League this season, the story that is huge. Even if we win the Champions League, it's like what on earth happened in the Premier League that we didn't win it?
We're cursed if
So
we don't.
100%. So I think the Premier League I pick. Someone asked me the other day, would I choose a domestic treble or the Champions League? And I was like, well, obviously a domestic treble. And so many people were picking the Champions League. And I was like,
you have to.
three
Treble,
trophies.
You have to. You have to.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I'm picking the Premier League because we absolutely have to win it this year. Have to win it. Next year, if you ask me the same question, it's the opposite answer. So
yeah, because we got that monkey off our back.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
For me, I'd still you make a great point, Tom. You're not lying. Selfishly, I'd go Champions League. I think the wounds of 2006 are still fresh. Like even when you was talking about the Champions League tie against PSG and you said Paris, like it did tug at my heartstrings. So like rather selfishly, I just need the champs. Like it's very childish. But I hate when we play teams and they're like, champions of Europe, you'll never sing that. Like that just shuts up immediately. But then you are right in that it does become a big story and it's above my pay grade and my knowledge, if I'm honest. But I wouldn't, if we don't win the Prem, I don't know where Arsenal, like whether it's Arteta, the players, Berta, everyone around them. I can't tell you where you go from there. I don't know what's the point of improvements. I don't have a clue. Of course, there's nuances and we can look at points that have been dropped, but I wouldn't know where you would go with that if I'm honest with you. So, yeah, man. Then you got another question, Tom. Tom, let's avoid the worrying question. What do you think are odds to win the Premier League, FA Cup, or the Prem and Champions League? So I think he's asking individually, all of them.
I think the odds of winning the Premier League we're odds on to win the Premier League this season. Shorter than evens, I'd put us. So, yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Champions League, it's really hard. Champions League's really hard. I'd say like 3-1, something like that. It's even though I think a lot of people put us shorter than 3-1 because of how good we are. I personally don't, because I just know how unpredictable that tournament is. Like it's so hard to win it, and one mistake can knock you out of it. That's the problem with cup competitions. One error, one bad performance, and you're out. So whereas the league, you can afford to drop a ball somewhere and still be okay because you've built up a buffer, as Arsenal have. So yeah, look, I think our chances of winning the Premier League are much higher than the Champions League just because of the format, basically.
I think you're bang on. We got two more questions, Tom. Tom, with the potential introduction of staff, i.e. Berta and now scouting personnel, does Arteta have any pressure to deliver since so many people are being replaced in the club? As in, does Arteta see himself also potentially being replaced if he doesn't deliver this season?
Arteta has never seen himself as irreplaceable at Arsenal. He knows how privileged he is to have the role that he has, and he knows that if he doesn't succeed, then he will move on, and the club will change. We saw that with Unai Emery. Went backwards, regressed, didn't show enough progress. They got rid of him. So with Arteta, I think the pressure has been there since day one. I think the pressure to succeed is there. Just because he doesn't win the league and then doesn't get sacked doesn't mean that there isn't still scrutiny. Doesn't mean that there is any less or any more now that he hasn't. I think that they've been very, very impressed by what he has done in the 5 years that he's been at Arsenal, 6 years that he's going to be at Arsenal. So I think the pressure is always there, regardless of how much change is going on behind the scenes and with the hierarchy. The pressure's the same, and he has to deliver. And I think that we've reached 2025. By the way, is something that they've been going on about. I know internally for a long time. Edu was going on about it before he left for a long time. 2025 was seen as the year that Arsenal would take things into a new level for many years going ahead. And they actually peaked or reached kind of a peak of competing before they thought they would. 2025, I think they saw maybe as like a year or even maybe 2 years later than what it actually happened to compete as successfully and as efficiently as we do. So yeah, this year's huge for Arsenal, and it has been for many years. They've viewed this year as being massive.
I think I make you right. And obviously, you look at the Napoli guy. We're in talks apparently to go and be obtaining it to work with Berta. You look at what you hear, better yet, because I don't know, but you hear what Heinz is doing. We see what Nicholas Hover is doing. We see what the players are doing. We see what the manager's doing. And actually, more so for people that go to the grounds, like Arteta and Arsenal actually got mocked for removing the kind of cover in the tunnel. Now you can see the method to the madness. So I make you right. All we need to do now is just win some silverware. Last question then, Tom. Do you believe we can go on on a win streak starting with Spurs, Bayern, and Chelsea, or do you think we might not win all three? I'm gonna say all three, man. F it.
Yeah, F it. Yeah, we're going to win all three.
Yeah.
We're going to rotate
Bayern
everything
might be a
against
draw, to be
Bayern.
fair.
We're going to use Bayern as a side to bed in our returning players because we're going to use them for that and still beat them. So yeah, I'm going to go all three.
And I'll answer this question in short. Of course, I'd love to win all 4 trophies. I'd love to stand here and be wrong Gooner Fans TV, but like to win all 4, we're dream chasing. Let's just try and get one over the line and try and compete. But we do have the numbers, provided everybody's fit to amicably compete in all competitions, man. So we'll have to see. But, the theme I'm getting from, having this conversation with Tom is kind of what I'm echoing. It's like, we don't know where the season's going to go. Just keep calm. If we was rubbish and we had no winning turn, I understand, throwing toys out the pram, but it's not that. Like, it really isn't that. Let's keep calm, back the boys. Let's see where we're in May 2026. We've got a lot of football and we're going to need everyone from the players to everybody. So it is what it is. Tom, as usual, it's always a pleasure, man. Let people know they can find you if I let you get out of it.
You can find me at The Good Talk, of course, every morning, 8 a.m. for our live shows. And if you want to read my work, you can find it at The Mirror and in football.london.
Exactly. So you know where to find him. I do you one better. It's pinned. Well, the YouTube channel of Tom's is in the title. Don't be lazy, support, and all of those things. Tom, appreciate you because it's early in the morning and this is probably your second live stream. Let me let you get on with your morning, my boy. Thank you,
pleasure,
as usual.
Mate. Pleasure.
And without the chat, it couldn't have been done. So big up yourselves, like, comment, subscribe. You probably agree and disagree and all that jazz. Join the discussion. But for now, we're out. Tom, appreciate you. In a bit. Chat, appreciate you. Peace.